she was able to navigate some pretty choppy waters.
And that's in part because she knew more than anybody else. She had been reading diplomatic and intelligence documents since 1952. There was no other human being on earth who did that, and that meant that she could talk on equal terms with those leaders that she was engaged with.
And of course, for younger leaders, they thought to themselves, British Prime Minister thought, gosh, she used to talk to Churchill. And American leaders would say, she talked to Eisenhower and Kennedy. I mean, it's quite a thing to think about.
Yeah, and it meant that, they took what she said seriously in a way that didn't have with anybody else.
We won't see her like again.
No, absolutely not. Certainly not on the international stage.
James Landale, thank you very much.
Just a final word as we approach midnight and the end of this special programme about tomorrow morning's newspapers, the images of the Queen, of course, but the words that they have chosen, they are largely words of thanks or a life in service, about love for the Queen, broken hearts and her doing her duty. It says it all, really. This is the end of this special programme for BBC News at the end of this day when Queen Elizabeth II died at the age of 96. Thank you for listening from Jim, me and our colleagues across the newsroom. Good night.
BBC News at midnight. This is Chris Aldridge. The death has been announced of Queen Elizabeth II, the nation's longest-serving monarch who was head of state for 70 years. She was 96. Fears for her health had been mounting throughout the day after royal officials revealed she was under medical supervision at Balmoral. The UK's new king, Charles III, said the death of his beloved mother was the greatest sadness for his family and would be felt across the world. The outpouring of messages of condolence has been global, with leaders from all continents remembering her as a stateswoman of unmatched dignity. In Britain, Buckingham Palace became a focus of national mourning, with thousands gathering outside, singing God Save the Queen. In tonight's bulletin, we'll reflect on a life of service which stretches back further than most can remember, and consider what next for the United Kingdom. At 6:30 this evening, Buckingham Palace announced the death of Queen Elizabeth II. She died peacefully at Balmoral Castle in Aberdeenshire this afternoon, after doctors had raised concerns about her health in the morning. The news has sparked an outpouring of grief as the United Kingdom mourns the death of its longest-reigning monarch, and the world reflects on the loss of a figurehead of stability for the past 70 years. Our royal correspondent Johnny Diamond has tonight's first report on a day which marks the end of an era.
A short statement from Buckingham Palace just after midday was the first indication that the Queen's condition was serious. The statement said that the Queen's doctors were concerned for her health and had recommended that she remained under medical supervision. Robert Hardman, biographer of the Queen, said that was a source of grave concern.
This morning's statement from the palace was an alarming one because the Queen has always been very reluctant to discuss her health. So to have a bulletin saying that her doctors are concerned she's under supervision, that was very unexpected.
Late last year, the Queen began to withdraw from a series of high-profile events. In June this year, she was absent from the service of Thanksgiving at her Platinum Jubilee. But 3 times she appeared on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, and 3 times the crowd made their feelings clear. Appearances since then were few. A long break in Balmoral is traditional over the summer, but there would be no return from her beloved Scottish retreat. Just after 1 o'clock today, with concern over the Queen's condition mounting, the Speaker addressed the House of Commons.
I know I speak on behalf of the entire House when I say that we send our best wishes to Her Majesty the Queen, and that she and the royal family are in our thoughts and prayers at this moment.
As the afternoon drew on, another mark of the seriousness of the situation. One by one, members of the royal family changed their plans and made their way towards Balmoral. Prince Charles and Princess Anne were already in Scotland. From RAF Northolt came a plane carrying Prince Andrew, Prince Edward and Prince William. Around an hour after landing in Aberdeen, cars at the gates of the castle. All day, rumours had swirled around the country and the world about the Queen's condition. At just after 6:30, a 26-word statement came from Buckingham Palace.
This is BBC News. We're interrupting our schedules for the following announcement. Buckingham Palace has announced the death of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II.
The King and the Queen Consort, the statement went on, would remain at Balmoral and would return to London on Friday. The new King released a statement. He wrote of his great sadness at the death of his beloved mother, of how the royal family mourned profoundly the passing of a cherished sovereign. Outside Buckingham Palace, a time-honoured tradition. The death notice of the monarch brought out on an easel for public display. Outside 10 Downing Street, the Prime Minister, just 2 days in office, addressed the nation. It was she who revealed how the King will be known in Britain and around the world.
It is a day of great loss, but Queen Elizabeth II leaves a great legacy. Today the crown passes, as it has done for more than 1,000 years, to our new monarch, our new head of state, His Majesty King Charles III.
And a torrent of tributes began, from presidents, prime ministers and monarchs, from faith leaders, from the charities the Queen championed, and from those who gathered in the rain outside Balmoral and Buckingham Palace. Across the country, across the world, flags were lowered in mourning and in respect. A lifetime of service had drawn to a close.
The Queen's home at Balmoral has been the focus of attention throughout the afternoon after it emerged that her health had deteriorated. Our correspondent Lorna Gordon sent this report from outside the estate.
Balmoral has been described as the place where the Queen felt most at home, surrounded by hills and heather, its seclusion affording privacy to a monarch whose life was lived in the public eye. And it was here, under low clouds and in driving rain, that senior royals gathered. All 4 of her children, the new king, King Charles III, his wife Camilla, the Princess Royal, Princess Anne, who was already in Scotland undertaking royal duties. Then late afternoon, a motorcade swept in, containing members of the royal household who'd flown to the airport in Aberdeen, which is little over an hour's drive from the Deeside estate. Among the passengers, the Duke of York, the Count and Countess of Wessex. One car was driven by Prince William, Prince Harry arriving later. One of those who'd gathered to pay their respects outside the castle gates remarked that they hoped it was some comfort to the Queen's family that she got to spend her last days in the place she loved so much.
Horrified. Expected though, wasn't it? You know, before all the family and everybody's here.
That's kind of heavy news to take in at the minute.
Shocking, obviously. I mean, I think it sadly was expected, but yeah, it's quite shocking.
Well, it's sad, and it's just been part of everyone's lives. Well, it's all my life, as long as I've been alive.
There are now a growing number of flowers and messages. The card on one said it was dedicated to a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother, our Queen. The note of condolence ended with the words, "Your job here is done, rest easy."
People have been leaving flowers at the gates of Windsor Castle, and a crowd of tens of thousands has gathered in front of Buckingham Palace. Our correspondent Lucy Manning is there.
They streamed through the streets of London, up the Mall to Buckingham Palace. The news passed quietly through the crowds as people stood and watched as the Union flag was lowered to half-mast. At first there were just a few hundred people, but as the rain and night fell, thousands came.
I thought she was fantastic, a role model for everybody, and she never put a foot wrong, did she?
I mean, I think people have complicated thoughts about the royal family and empires and things like that. I think that's okay, but she's been leader of this country for so many decades. It's really longer than a lot of people have been alive, so it's a very sad day.
Yeah, I can't really believe it, to be honest. I know she's getting older, but it's one of the things you never believe is going to happen. That's quite upsetting, really.
No one here, truthfully, was sure what to do, but they know they wanted to be here, to stand, to mark the moment, to bring flowers, to remember. There was applause,
There was the anthem, words that have echoed here for 70 years. Around 50 black cabs line the Mall under dark and rainy skies to pay tribute to the Queen.
It went out on social media shortly after she passed away. It would be a nice touch for all the cabbies to come to the Mall and line up, form a procession. So that's what we did. I think she was great. I mean, the amount of tourism that she brought in, you know, from our point of view as cabbies, she kept us busy. And she was just a great person, I think.
Her kingdom is united in sorrow but also in admiration, in the sense that people here feel fortunate to have lived in her era. She was long to reign over us. Through change and turmoil, there has always been the Queen.